I used to hate my voice, obviously. I think everybody has experienced that in their life, but like I've heard it so much at this point, just like because I write out melodies with my voice or I beatbox a lot. Like before, it's part of my writing process, so I'm actually just very used to hearing my own voice as just
Yeah.
kind of this natural part of like just my environment.
Yeah.
And so I used to be self-conscious about how I sound, just like how I talked. But at this point, I'm just like, just talk, just go with what's natural, and
Yeah.
people
I think
people don't complain about it.
doing stuff like this and doing stuff like YouTube has kind of gotten me more used to it as well. And like I said, just finding, if I'm capturing more of that deeper tone, it makes my voice feel a little bit more like what I'm used to hearing kind of in my own head. So it makes it feel less unnatural to me. It still feels unnatural. Like, the thing I hate about my voice when I hear it recorded is that it feels a lot nasalier to me.
I don't get the nasally vibe at all. Yeah, no.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I hear so much more of like the nasal cavity when I'm listening to my voice recorded than I do when I'm speaking. I think probably just because it's so deep in my head, I'm getting a completely different response when I hear it.
Interesting. Like for me, like I when I hear myself, I sound like clumsy, right? So I want to make myself sound more succinct than I actually am, but then I actually end up sounding more clumsy.
Yeah.
In actuality, when I say it. So I'm just like, you know what? Why bother? Just talk, dude. Just chill the fuck out.
try to keep it natural.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the true. Yeah. The intro is like that sometimes. Well, hello,
do your thing.
Yeah, I'm trying. We'll get there eventually.
Do your thing.
I might leave that in. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the True North Audio Podcast. I am your host, Kiko. Joining me today, I have Vasily.
What's up, guys? How are you doing?
We are going to be talking a little bit of gear today, and this is either going to be the first half of one podcast where we bring in TJ later on and kind of talk Peak Divide and talk about the soundtrack for Unbeatable, or it's going to be a separate thing. It'll just be its own podcast, and we'll just have that as a separate thing later on too. We're going to kind of play it by ear. You guys will know when this comes out. You'll figure it out fairly quickly.
Sure.
When you get to the end of it and have been introduced to TJ or not. But for now, it's going to just be the two of us. Just, nerding out because...
That's what we do.
Yeah.
That's what we do when we talk anyway. So.
Oh, man, no kidding. Toby and I, too. Toby and I can nerd out for music just forever. Nerding on gear is kind of my thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have the rule that the Six Figure Home Studio did with no gear talk. They had the gear slut alert, too. Anytime someone like name dropped any piece of gear, they'd have a little alarm for that and everything.
No,
I mean, it was a business podcast, so that is fair. But
yeah, you got to be sensitive with branding with that kind of stuff. But this is like like one of those. This is a more casual podcast where the gear is kind of like part of our current growth cycle, where we're trying to grow into. So what we're talking about is just what we want to incorporate, what we don't want to incorporate,
what we can't afford to incorporate.
Exactly. Yeah,
that's usually the big one.
or both. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, we're recording this. Oh man, I can't even remember off the top of my head what the day is, but I can tell you that today is the day that George Jetson is born. So
George Jetson's born today.
Yeah, George Jetson is born today.
So why do you remember that specific?
I remember it because I've seen it like 5 times on social media
Oh,
already.
okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, so I don't know what the date is off the top of my head, but you can look up what day George Jetson is born, and that's today's podcast. But Neural DSP just earlier today dropped another teaser for whatever their next amp sim is going to be. We've been trying to figure it out, and right now we're kind of thinking it's Mesa Mark V. That's kind of what it's looking like it's going to be.
So what is that built around? Because I'm actually not too familiar with Neural.
So Neural
DSP.
just it's just a great company for buying what, for my money, are some of the best like guitar amp sims on the market.
Yeah,
they're it's like between them, ML, and STL for me.
Yeah.
Those three all kind of have their own thing going on. Like STL kind of has like tone packs, and they've got like almost the Kemper thing going on, where they'll like profile sounds from individual producers and guitarists and stuff. And then Neural actually has like AI learning, and they use that to like really carefully and closely model amps that these different producers are guitarists or engineers or whatever have, or even just a specific amp that they're trying to model. So they have their archetype series where they've got like John Petrucci or Pliny or, Nolly from, Get Good Drums and Periphery and stuff like that. They'll have those where they model those guys' amps. Gojira is my favorite right now. Sounds fantastic. And then they have ones where they're like, this is a Soldano SLO or something like that. So we're thinking, the thing is they're due for a new archetype, which is, one of the artist series. So we're thinking maybe it's going to be that, but it's looking like it's going to be a Mesa Mark V. So we're, I got my fingers crossed. So that's what I was telling Tobias. I told him like, me, man, I'm going to buy a Mesa, as quickly as you're going to grab an orange amp or something like that. And so I'm like, man, I'm realizing I want a Mesa. I want a, VHT Pitbull. I want like a Rev Generator 120. And my taste in amps is like live amps is really expensive.
And that goes with like the trade, right? The more you go into something, the more you get an ear for it. And I think it's really cool that these amp sims are getting so accurate, especially with like AI and like neural DSP. It's in the name. Like, especially with more and more people living in working inside and people working in apartments or duplexes, people can't even if they can afford an amp, they can't afford to play the amp because they're going to get complaints. They're going to, they'll get an eviction notice.
You got to get a load box. Like, for those who can, no one can see it. It's an audio podcast. But sitting like right in front of Vasily, I have my 2 Notes load box just like right on top of the bass amp over there. That's the other trick. But not only that, but you get so many great sounds really cheap these days too. You can get a Neural for $150. And, you got sounds that'll compete with a lot of good amps, even the good amps. I got Neurals that'll compete with the 6505 over there. And I still love that amp. I break it out all the time, but the fact that I can buy a sim these days that actually competes with that like really nice tube amp, it's crazy.
There's going to be minute differences, right? That you're going to be able to tell the difference. Like if you have a trained ear, you're going to tell the difference. It's like, this is obviously an amp sim, but there are so many situations where you just can't use an amp when you're recording. Just that's how life is sometimes.
Yeah. No, in fact, Toby actually had a shootout recently where Joel Wanasek, he's like, if you're familiar with URM, you're familiar with Joel, and he's also a producer on like tons of really awesome stuff. Like, for example, the latest Monuments. And Joel was kind of looking at a 5153, and Toby has the Gojira, which has the 5153 as a sim, and then he actually has the 5153 as the, physical amp. And so he shot out the 2 of those against each other using, all the same chain, basically 5153 into the load box, using all the same plugins and the same guitar cab IRs and stuff, and just sent it over to him. And, it was one of those, like, they were very close. You could definitely tell there's a little bit of a difference if you know what you're listening, excuse me, if you know what you're listening for. And, generally the live amps still kind of beat it out. But at the same time, like, 5153 is way more expensive than a, Neural Gojira,
right.
So, it's a great deal. And I'm very much of the mindset of like blending tone. So I love to get live amps mic'd up with the cab and then blend that in with a really good amp sim or something like that. I love the sound of like stacked tone.
Right.
That's
like
totally
hybrid
my thing.
Everything is just like good, and it's just so versatile nowadays. Like you can have super clean digital sounds. You can go like complete analog. You can go complete, completely analog with a synth, or obviously the cabs, right? So it's a completely different workflow that you can approach nowadays. And
I really love the kind of power. The unfortunate thing is I am very much a hybrid workflow guy, which means that I'm just spending all the money on all the things.
It is.
I envy the guys who work entirely in the box, like headphones and everything. Like my whole studio is on a laptop with a interface, and I'm good. And like the freedom of that must be amazing. But at the same time, like I love me a good preamp. I love me a good guitar amp. I love me a good, analog synthesizer, though I only have one.
Need gear, but for some people, 100%. It makes working a lot easier or faster.
Well, and that's the thing. Workflow is such a big thing. Like, you're not going to sound better because you have some really expensive piece of gear. It's all about your needs and your workflow. Like, working faster is important, and then things that just sort of meet your existing kind of sound or workflow. It's like you can give, again, amp sims are a great example that you can give the same amp sim to, 50 guitarists of varying levels. I'm going to sound terrible on any amp sim. And, guys like Toby have got that strong right hand game. They're going to sound amazing on any amp sim, know, and, you can give him something cheap, he'll get a good tone out of it. And for me,
performance is like 85% of music.
Yeah, 100%. Especially in guitar, the tone is in the hands. A lot of people talk about it, but it really is true. That picking technique makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Going back to URM, I'll talk about URM a lot. Like Toby and I, when we did the first episode, we talked to URM all the time because it was pretty important in the making of his record. It's a community he and I are both in. He works for them technically. So, but yeah, we have the guitar course, the ultimate guitar course. And there's a whole section in there where they just shoot out picks,
just picks.
It's like, this is this shape, this is this thickness. And it's just listen to the difference. And you can actually find a truncated version of it on YouTube, which is really cool.
Well, it's like recently I've been using a tiny ass jazz pick on bass, right? And it looks ridiculous because you have this tiny pick and these huge strings, but it's like, I love using it. I can pick so fast. And it hurts my fingers more when I do it. So I can't do it for long sessions. But if I need to do like a short and intense part of a version, or if I'm like comping a bass part, I'm going to use that and it's going to sound great. And then I'll move to the 2mm for like, your typical heavy stuff.
Your chunk.
Yeah, your chunk. Yeah. Exactly.
Well, that's kind of one of the things is you kind of come to the conclusion. It's like different ones are going to be good for different types of performance. Like when you listen to the shootout, you're like, I really like the 1mm like nylon Dunlop, but the jazz pick on this particular style just nails it. That's one of the things too, is like my personal favorite pick when I do play, which is, I've not done it in ages, but like when I was playing was the 1mm, Dunlop nylon. But like Tony, our last guest, he's a Jazz 3 guy. He loves the Jazz 3. He's Jazz kind of a shredder, exactly. And it's like, I like the Jazz 3 for technique. I like the comfort of it. For me, I think if I were to design my ultimate pick, it would be a slightly less pointed Jazz 3, but that's about the 1mm Dunlop kind of thickness. Give me that best of both worlds. It'd probably, I don't know, it would either be the best pick or it'd be terrible, but
I will argue, because we did say earlier that gear doesn't make you better, but I will say that picks kind of like,
well, to be fair, picks are also like 5 cents a piece. So
yes, but like, okay, so if you have like
it's not a case
picks,
of like the expensive one is gonna or whatever, at the end of the day, but part of that is because picks do determine your performance in a lot of ways too. The performance is a big part, and a pick that's comfortable for how you play is going to make a difference in how you sound for sure.
Because some will like let you mute better than others. Some will let you tremolo pick faster, but some are just like bad, like merchandise picks, like anything that you get like at
the
a merch
cheapest,
booth.
whatever, like some
the garbage,
really thin, really brittle. It exists to have somebody's logo on it. Yeah.
Those are garbage.
Those aren't going to get you very far, and they're not comfortable to play either. No. Yeah, that's kind of one of those things too, though. Like those are more for promotion anyway. You learn that pretty quick as a guitarist too. I don't feel like I know very many people who started getting good, like even at half talent, who are still using stuff like that. I think people find their picks pretty quickly.
I picked up my dad's Stratocaster, right? And I was learning on a Yes pick that TJ gave me. And I was like, man, I'm having a really hard time learning how to strum. And then I got like a Gin Dunlop, 1mm, and I was just having a much better time picking it up. Like, I wasn't good, right? I'm not going to say that pick made me better, but it helped me learn faster.
It was more comfortable.
It was more comfortable.
Yeah. It informed your performance.
Yeah.
In a way, Yeah, it's funny too, is I got 3 concert used picks that I've collected from various shows. I got Blind Guardian one. I've got an All That Remains one.
Really?
Actually, the Blind Guardian one I think I got from one of our buddies, Colin or Sterling.
Holy
I think
shit, that's sick.
Yeah. So I got Blind Guardian. I got the All That Remains, and then I have one for a guy named Kenny Thomas. Is a like country singer that we saw way back in the day, and like the All That Remains one, that's just like 2mm like gator pick. Like, in fact, I have to keep it separated because I actually bought like a whole bunch of the same 2mm gator pick. Yeah. So if I don't keep it separated, it's hard to distinguish which one was the show used one. The only way to tell is like there's like a really specific like marking from the like the abrasion of the strings on the edge of it, and that's pretty much it.
Those things are built like tanks.
Yeah,
I like beat the shit out of the 2mm, and they're still fine.
Yeah. Well, the thing too is like the gator picks are. Those are one of my favorites for bass personally. I find that they have like the stiffness gives you a really good kind of response. I mean, obviously everyone's going to have different results, but for me, it's, I found them on guitar a little bit too stiff, like I found it kind of uncomfortable to play a little bit because they didn't have enough give. And that's what I liked about the 1mm is that it had just enough give to, kind of play a little bit faster without like getting caught on the string. Like it felt like there was a little too much attack and a little too much kind of clunk.
Yeah.
Playing with the thick 2mm. But I mean, at the same time, All That Remains are, the guitar work is really, really good. I'm not gonna speak to the
they're incredible. Yeah.
But yeah. I mean the musicianship is really good there, and I mean what am I thinking? The fact that he's using a pick that doesn't work for me just means that he found the pick that worked for him, So, I mean, it's just, that is what it is. And that's kind of it too, different people are going to be different with like comfortable with different pieces of equipment. Vocals are kind of another thing where you do have to be a little bit more picky about it because everybody's voice is so different. Like, I mean, you're going to get very different sounding instruments and stuff, but generally like, if a mic works on snare, it's going to work pretty well on snare or, or whatever bass. But like people's voices people are attuned to the voice so much more specifically than they are to, a snare drum.
Right.
You can get away with just cheapo mics, but people kind of pay attention to those details. And especially like we were talking about before we started recording, the way that people are like conscious about their own voice, picking a mic that complements your voice, or the voice of a performer can go a long way. And I mean, the funny thing is part of that even is psychology of it. Yeah. Vocals are all psychology. If you got a mic that isn't complimenting the vocalist and they're getting in their own head about it, they're going to have a terrible performance because they're not thinking about it right. But I mean,
our language processing,
even then, you don't have to go too hard on it.
I mean, the language processing center of our brain is so sensitive to that kind of stuff versus like environmental stuff because it's genuinely two different parts of our brain that are tuned for it. And it's like our brain automatically mixes that. And there are like, if you use a mic that doesn't quite work with the vocalist, you're going to notice, especially after a while, you're going to be like, something's not right.
Yeah.
And you may not be able to tell right away, especially if you're not, a gear enthusiast.
Well, I mean, that's why you'll get guys like, you go into a studio and they got like, here's my collection of like knockoff SM57s with a circuit mod for the drums and the guitars, and the bass is just direct in. I'm not even micing that up. And here's my $6,000 vocal mic for the vocalist. Yeah, I mean it's just kind of how it goes. I mean, I'm pretty happy with the setup I got here. I mean, I found the pod mic. I mean, I found this one's actually very complimentary to my voice. Originally I was using the SM7B that you're using.
Yeah.
Or I have the Sterling ST159, which I also really like because it's got that like kind of richer sound. The Warm Audio WA47 Junior, I find that one complements my voice pretty well. So like those are kind of my go-to mics, but those are not going to be good for everyone else. Like there's other people who are probably going to get a pod mic and be really unsatisfied with it. Although I do still recommend it for anything else. Yeah. Great thing about it is really cheap, but it's a great guitar cab mic, great bass cab mic. You get that like deep kind of roar in it sometimes.
It's got a pretty big capsule in it, right?
Yeah, it's pretty beefy. And I mean, honestly, like I said, it's a pretty good catch-all mic. This guy probably gets used nearly as much as the SM57 by this point for me, which really is saying something. I mean, the SM57 is a workhorse. You'll find it in any studio.
I've always wanted to like try one in my setup because like I don't have an SM57 or a SM7B rather. Mm-hmm. And I've always wanted to work with that one, and especially because I got just a Fender practice amp recently, and like I'm using an NT1 with it, and it's all right, it's fine, but I'd really rather use a dynamic mic with it. I think it's gonna be able to capture that sound better.
My personal favorite for guitar cabs is still the SM58.
Classic.
Well, I mean, it's funny because it's one of those, like, I've told people that before. The SM57 is the go-to. A lot of people don't really think about the 58, and a lot of people also kind of don't like it. They'll prefer the 57 over the 58. So it's not as common, but I know Dimebag Darrell, he's one of the guys who did prefer it. So I know I'm in good company there. A lot of people are, speak pretty highly of Dimebag's sound. So
I mean, if you want that thrash tone, you're going to want the 57 for sure.
Yeah. But I mean, at the end of the day, for me, the 58, I joined a group one time, like a community for producers and stuff. And somebody was asking like, what kind of recommendations you have. And I was like two days into joining the group. And like, I didn't know the guy who ran it yet. And so I'm recommending the SM58. And he like pulls me aside. He's like, private message, like, yo, like, can you produce some results for this? Is like, I got a lot of guys in here who give some really like weird, dumb advice. Like, are you really going to say 58 over 57 or whatever? And I ended up just sending him some of the tracks I'd done for Josh's old band that I did the reamps for and stuff. Like, all right, no, that sounds good. I trust you. I see what you're up to. Now he comes, now same guy, like, knows what I know, or what am I thinking? Jeez. Now the same guy, like, actually knows that I have a background and experience and career in audio. So it does trust the judgment. But I mean, it is one of those things, like, you throw it at some people and some people are just like, you sure? You're not blowing smoke up my ass? That sounds ridiculous. Why would you take 58 over the 57? But I don't know. I really like the 58. I feel like it just has a little bit more growl.
You got more growl. You got more upper harmonic information. And honestly, like, even with like hip hop, like like some people are like, you got the rich guys who are using the TLM 103
or the freaking Sony C800.
Yeah, like, you got the big bucks. But if you don't got the big bucks, you got a 58 because you can't afford a TLM 103.
Yeah,
and it sounds fine, especially for hip hop or rap.
Yeah,
and it's like there's so many artists who use it, and it sounds good because the performance is good.
Yeah,
and honestly, it's just kind of become like culturally integrated into that, where it's just like, that's the mic. That's one of the mics you use.
I mean, the appearance of it is like the SM58 is like the quintessential mic. If you just put it in front of somebody, they know what it is, like, right away, because it's like, if you had a clip art of a microphone, it's going to basically be an SM58. Yeah. People aren't as likely to recognize a 57, even though that one is absolutely, like, iconic.
Right.
It's been in music since the 60s. And
any drummer will recognize it.
Yeah, I mean, there's even just vocals and stuff. It was like a go-to mic for, I mean, like, most of the famous speeches we hear from, like, the late 60s and stuff are done on that mic. You know, you look up, what am I thinking? Richard Nixon, I'm Not a Crook. That was an SM57. Well, it was a Unidyne 3 at the time.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like a lot of those famous quotes, you listen to them, you're listening to the sound of the SM57 too. It used to be a popular voiceover mic just as much as an instrument mic. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing too, is like, you don't need the expensive gear. The SM57, like I said, you'll find that in like any studio. You'll go to Abbey Road. Abbey Road has all the best gear. They're one of the most iconic studios in the world. They're still going to have a locker of 57s.
Yeah, they're going to have a couple dozen of them. Yeah.
Even there, you're going to find, exactly, like dozens of SM57s and stuff. Even the biggest studios in the world always have the 57. Even if they only have one mic under $1,000, it's going to be an SM57.
Yep.
Always. And, that's kind of part of it, because it just gets the job done. And I mean,
it's a workhorse, but it's not a Swiss Army knife for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm somebody who, like, I have a ton of mics. I think I had like 35, and I left some with Josh, and I think I'm close to 30 again. But it's,
that's I got a lot of mics.
Yeah, I got a lot of cheap mics. I got mics for like $10, and I got, I don't currently have one, but I did have one that was like up in the 4-figure range, and they all do different jobs, and I like them all for different stuff, and I love having the variety. But I mean, I could absolutely just, have like 2 mics and just live off 2 mics or whatever until I could afford to get more or whatever. I mean, when you know what you're doing, you can work with the strengths of whatever you have, even with the limitations. But don't get me wrong, I still want to buy myself like an old Telefunken C12.
Oh, who doesn't? Yeah, who the fuck doesn't?
Right, exactly. I mean,
yeah.
How do you not want a C12? Those things are beautiful. I mean, everyone wants a U47, right?
Everyone.
Freaking,
not everyone has, $9,000.
Yeah. Apparently everyone wants a C800 now too.
Yeah. Freaking like what I've seen on some on Reverb for $12,000. Well, how much should they be MSRP?
Well, I mean, again, it's like I remember
$4,000 or something crazy.
It wasn't quite that low, but I do remember at the time it was like $8,000 for a C800.
Yeah,
and then they like went up to $10,000 MSRP and like 16 for freaking used ones for a while. Yeah, and it's like it was completely just like. I don't know. It became like a lifestyle brand almost, like this Sony C800. I think that if I remember right, again, I think it was the
Kanye uses that mic, right? I'm pretty sure.
I think he does. I think there was a lot of like SoundCloud rappers for a while using it, and so it became like an influencer mic.
Yeah, the influencer mic.
Yeah, kind of
rich influencer.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of guys, like, oh, this is the mic that's going to make your rap vocals sound good. So like all the rappers were buying the C800s out. Kind of in the way that like every rocker has to have a U47, and it inflated the price. Or heck, I mean, the other thing that went through that same treatment was the old block letter 5150s.
Yeah.
Those were like $500 used, and then suddenly they blew up for no reason at all. And people are selling this $500 amp for like $1,500, $2,000.
Yeah, there's an insane secondary market for microphones, and you don't really see that with like preamps as much because preamps don't have this culture around them. Preamps have like, it's like you got the 512C, you got the you got all the Neve amps, and it's like those stay relatively the same, and they do appreciate in value over time.
People want a 1073, people want a 512C, but it doesn't quite have the same. Like the microphone is this, the microphone's the sexy part. That's the one everyone gets excited about. I mean,
because that's the part you're seeing. That's the part you're interacting with.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the part that people are seeing in the videos. It's the part people are seeing on TikTok or Instagram. The
music videos, right? They have it right in front of their face. It's like it's as much part of the performance as the actor, right?
Yeah.
So it's like it's interesting.
The making of videos back in the day and stuff. I mean, it's like one of my buddies is a huge Michael Jackson fan, and we watched the making of. What am I saying? It was Making of Bad. I wanted to say Thriller. It was Making of Bad on like Discord together. Just like he and I and a few of our buddies were watching that. And I'm just watching through. It's like 1986 or whatever. And like, there's a Telefunken C12. There's a U47. And when Smooth Criminal came up, he was like, what's that one? What's that one there? It's like, oh, that's the SM7. Yeah, it's the
original.
Yeah, it's a classic. Yeah, I mean, it's,
I want
you can't go wrong.
And want one.
100%. Like, I mean, that's the thing too, is like SM7B was like $250, at least when I bought it,
they're like 400 now. Yeah.
Yeah. Telefunken C12 is like freaking 12 to 25 grand used.
It changes like weekly. I feel
man, it's ridiculous. No, it's like, it depends entirely on who's selling it when and what moon phase are we in or whatever today. That's going to determine the C12 price today. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really want to get one though. I did. So, excuse me. Earlier today, I was watching Colt Caparoon. Who's one of the like many, audio YouTubers I follow and really enjoy. And he did a video the other day where he basically like gutted and rebuilt half of his studio in like 24 hours because he had a bunch of like new gear he was trying to rearrange. And he did that, and he's doing the studio tour, and part of it is he's got this Warm Audio like C12 kind of knockoff that he's playing around with. I don't think it's out yet. I think they sent it to him to test before they put it out. I could be wrong. I didn't look it up, and I'll have to
maybe
look
like
it up
a reviewer
later.
Model.
Yeah, something like that. But it got me thinking like, man, I love the WA-47 Junior. I'd be really interested to see how the, WA-C12 goes. They've got, like, generally Warm Audio has a really good kind of track record.
They do.
For, like, affordable top-end gear. They're kind of like ART. I got those ART preamps there. ART is another one of those. They have the, I want to say the VLA or MPA. Give me one sec. Okay, so the VLA. The VLA is the compressor. I can never remember which was the compressor of the preamp. The VLA is one of those. It was like $250 for this like tube compressor, and you can still find other art like tube compressor models real cheap. But it was one of those, or it was kind of like the SM57, where like you'd go into these studios, these huge, really expensive studios, and like, this is our, this is our 1965 LA2, and here's our like original Blue Stripe 1176, and here's an ART VLA2.
Yeah.
And it was, it was another one of those ones where it's like, ART has a pretty good track record in my experience with producing like really cheap, good gear. Like I've had really good experiences with like all the ART gear I've messed with, and some of it is way cheaper than it has any business being, although some of it's starting to go up. Like, that preamp there, again, that was $250, something like that.
It's like 500 now or something?
Yeah, it's like $500 now.
Yeah,
like
it's appreciated
MSRP,
value.
like new.
The secondary market is absolutely insane right now because it's like I've been looking at the Aural Exciter Type C right now.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, the pre-1992 model is going to be really expensive because like people are starting to make plugins modeled after it. I look online and it's $100.
Yeah.
I'm going to get one. It's probably going to be like 500 in a couple years or maybe less. I don't know, but it's a unique sound that you can't get from a plugin.
Toby managed to score another one of those like, again, surprised that the price hasn't gone up because there have been a couple videos recently that have been kind of outing the secret of it.
Yeah.
But if you're a fan of the Mesa oversized cabs, if you're a guitarist and you want that like Mesa oversized sound, the Marshall Mode, not Code, Mode
Okay.
from like the late 90s, early 2000s is about the same spec as an oversized, and you just got to throw some V30s in it, basically. And it like they're going on the used market for like nothing. He bought an entire Mode half stack for like $300, I think.
How much were they in it like new? Like when they first
came out? I don't know what they were new because they're an old one. They're like System of a Down, I think, is like one of the more famous artists who had played them back in the day. But yeah, they were like, the thing is, I don't think they were that much new either. I think they were kind of one of those ones that was like prosumer, I think that was kind of in the category it was supposed to be, but I don't know. I don't remember. I don't remember it being for sale at all. I think I didn't hear about it until it started coming up as a like Mesa oversized alternative. That's like, like a Mesa oversized cab is like freaking $2,000 sometimes. Like $1,200, $2,000 depending on what you get, and people are like chasing after specific like time periods for them because they're trying to get like the 2004 V30 or something like that.
Well, just you wait. The Weeknd is going to use it, and it's going to appreciate like in octuple in value, kind of like the freaking Juno 60 did.
Oh, frick! No kidding. Or
God, I wanted to get a Juno 60, but nope, not anymore.
What's the other one? There was the Blade Runner synth. That's like
the CS80.
Yeah, the CS80. Thank you. That's one of those ones that just always like going up in price. It's
it's probably like $200,000 right now. I think.
Yeah, it's like a 6-figure freaking investment these days.
Who's making the rack-mounted clone of it right now? It wasn't Behringer. Who the fuck was it? It was
maybe Arturia.
No, maybe Arturia.
I know Arturia kind of does like
they did the software
similar. They definitely did the software. I have the software. That's in the
No,
the
there's
V
someone
collection.
making an analog clone of the rack synth. Hang on.
It might be a bespoke. In fact, I think Christian reviewed it on his channel, or even maybe the Piano Book channel. But I think that he reviewed it on his. Because I remember hearing about that, and I remember him saying like, I've always wanted the CS80, couldn't afford it because it's stupidly priced. You can buy a house for the cost of those things, or these days just a car and a tank of gas. But I mean, that one's like the one to invest. Synths too. That's another one. Speaking of like the gear that appreciates in value like immediately. Synths are another one of those things. It's like if it gets popular for any reason, it's just gonna skyrocket.
Yeah, and it's like I'm glad I got the Moog Matriarch for like I think like 600 under MSRP, and I think I cannot find that anymore because I kept it on my Reverb feed, and it's just like I can't find it for that price anymore because so many people have made videos on it, and so many people are using it.
Well, I'm trying to think. There was what was the Moog I wanted? There's an older one that I think it was the Poly Moog, maybe.
Moog, yeah. I want the Moog.
No,
Rogue.
Memory Moog.
Oh, the Memory Moog. Oh yeah. That one's a classic. I want the Moog Rogue. Dude.
Yeah.
Because so I recently found this spreadsheet that talked about a bunch of old artists that were like making music for Sega Genesis or NES, SNES stuff that weren't using sound fonts, that were uploading their own samples, and like 80% of them were using the Moog Rogue. A lot of the video game sounds that you remember from back in the day were the Moog Rogue.
Huh.
And it's like, not many people talk about that, and I kind of want to get one until people start finding out. I was going to say, you better
get that now.
Yeah.
That is so. As soon as that gets out, that's going away. This is going to be ridiculous.
And it's like, I don't want to treat synths like, like stocks, right? Because
they kind of are.
But they kind of are, and I unfortunately have to engage with them that way, which sucks.
It really
I don't
does.
like doing it, but that's just, I kind of have to.
Oh, man. No, I totally feel you on that. Because it's like, you want something nice, it's going to be ridiculous. I mean, it's like, it's not like the DX7 or whatever.
Yeah.
So all over the place. You can get them in a thrift store for like $10, but
and it's like it's a digital synth, so the software versions are actually a 1-to-1.
Yeah.
But there is something about the physical version that's fun. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a tactile, experience. Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing. Like Toby is a very much in the box guy, save for mostly like amps and stuff. But he still has like the fader controllers and stuff because the like tactile experience of setting a mix with the faders.
It's different than a mouse. It's just different.
Yeah, it's a very rewarding. It can change your workflow. It really can. I mean, I'm the same way. I've joked before. It's like there's so many. My setup gets all messy because I can never seem to settle on how I want it. I'm like, even watching Colt's video earlier today, like seeing him tear apart, an entire rack and unplugging everything and resetting a patch bay and everything. And it's like, part of me is like, how would I do this or how would I do that? And so like, I'm constantly thinking, I'm going to do a touch screen. No, I'm going to do like a fader, like a controller. No, I'm going to like, man, wouldn't it be cool if I could create like, all of my hardware just lives in a rack in another room, and I have little like, what am I thinking? Little like servos that I can control from a plug-in on the computer.
Like completely remote setup.
Like analog access, like what they're doing. Like, wouldn't it be cool if I could just like install servos into all the gear and just do that? And oh man, wouldn't it be cool if I could do that with guitar pedals and stuff like that? And then I'm like, sometimes I'm in the mood, or sometimes I'm thinking like, I'm going to get a patch bay. I'm going to run all my pedals and amp like effects loops into the patch bay. And then I can just plug that in and
have a pedal going into the signal.
Yeah. And then other times I'm like, man, I think I'm just going to have like a chain that's kind of set up and I'm just going to grab whatever pedals I want and just plug them in, and I can never like settle on what kind of, workflow I want to have because I'm always kind of go, oh man, but it'd be really cool to do this. Oh man, but it'd be really cool. Oh man, I don't want much analog hassle. Oh man, I want all the analog gear.
That just means that your workflow is about changing workflow. And that's that's fine. A lot of people are like that.
Oh boy, it slows you down though.
And it slows you down, but like if you're happy with the sound that you're getting from it, I mean, it's worth the time you're putting into it. And it's like,
yeah, that's for sure.
I had a conversation the other day with a friend who went to school for Japanese, and he was like, "I need to translate English into Japanese, which is way harder than translating Japanese into English."
Yeah,
and he was like, "Yeah," and so it's like, I don't want to pay. I don't want him to pay for the full price because I'm not sure about like the process. I'm like, dude, you're researching the progress. You need to value your time and experience behind that. And I'm just like, and I kind of, I wanted to start implementing that into the rest of my workflow, because it's like, even though it doesn't feel like I'm working or being productive, I am, because I'm doing research. I'm researching how I want to work or how to be better. That is part of a productive process.
So one of the things I've been working on, I mean, I've shared the process a bit with you over the last 2 weeks. I think I've been kind of messing around with this.
Yeah.
Is building a template for the BBC Symphony Orchestra and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Like the just full build, all the articulations, everything. I just activate whatever I need and I can write and build off that.
How's that going right now?
I have it all. I have all the individual tracks put together. So I have preset like multi-instruments in Logic, and I can just open that up and I can pull up like violin 1, and then it drops down and you have all the articulations as like their own track.
Okay.
So I have all those done. Basically, I just need to sit down and create a template. I need to create a template that has like the like epic strings and epic woodwinds and stuff as like a scratch track, like writing track.
Right.
And then all my sends, and then all the different groups all sectioned off, and then like organized in the order that you would want to have them for like scoring. Basically, how it would be written out on the actual score so it can be read properly. That's kind of the big thing I'd be trying to capture. Because for me, like I'm kind of playing it for myself, but who knows, down the road, I might start actually trying to like write stuff that I have to send to people, and I want it like laid out already, like in the template. I want it ready to go so I can just score it, give it to the composer, the conductor, or whatever, and they can just go, okay.
They can commission a whole symphony to take care of it.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, like if I'm doing client work with like a metal band or something, and we're writing stuff, and they're like, we want to use real strings.
Yeah.
Then I can actually like transpose it into workable sheet music. So I mean, MIDI to sheet music is a whole process anyway.
It is.
So the more you can do to make it faster and easier for yourself. The cool thing is you can do like write sheet music in Logic, and then you can actually print it out as a PDF.
Yeah.
So
that's one thing I wish Ableton has. Is like some sort of a sheet music integration, because it's like there's so many artists that would still work that way, and it's like I personally don't work in that way, but it's like, what if I want like guitar tabs, right?
Yeah.
Or like use guitar tabs into like MIDI as one-to-one, because I know how to read those. Most people do, but sometimes I like to work in that environment, and it's like Cubase. I think Pro Tools has sheet music stuff now.
I mean, I would hope so. They own, Sibelius, I think.
I don't know who's Sibelius.
The one. I think that Avid owns like the main software that's used for a lot of sheet music and stuff these days. I think that they own that. So
I never use that.
If Pro Tools doesn't have that, then I'd be pretty shocked. Yeah. Or maybe I wouldn't. I don't know.
I know Cubase has a really, really in-depth one.
Yeah.
And then I didn't know about Logic's.
If I had to be a Windows user, I think I'd be in Cubase personally.
Cubase the thing is really similar to Logic.
Yeah, that's kind of exactly it. I think that if that would probably be the one whose workflow is the best for me. Maybe Studio One. I do like a lot of things about Studio One, but I mean, I think Cubase would be probably the more like, as I think Cubase. The key thing Cubase has over Studio One for sure for me that I love about Logic is the simplicity.
Oh,
Logic is clean.
I think Studio One is too simple, honestly. There's like, when you right click, there's like 4 options.
Yeah, no, I get that for sure. I mean,
it has really good mastering tools, really good mastering tools. So it'll tell you like integrated or short term, like LUFS, for example, in a waveform, which like nothing else does as far as I've seen. So it'll tell you like loudness. It'll tell you like everything about your waveforms that you need. Whereas like Ableton doesn't. I master in Ableton, but I think I'd prefer not to.
Yeah, I know. I could be completely misquoting, so I could be way off on this, but I want to say that Ermin from Submission Audio, who also like masters like every major metal record for the last like 5-10 years or whatever, I want to say he masters in Studio One.
It's been a lot more popular because they're adding more features to make mastering easier.
Yeah. I think that I've definitely heard like a lot of top guys say that they like the idea of Studio One, or even actually use Studio One as a mastering like DAW. As I've seen that, I've seen Reaper's for mastering.
Reaper's been the popular one for like the last I think 11 years.
Reaper's definitely. I mean, I think one thing that helps with Reaper is the cost of entry is really accessible for a lot of people. So, I mean, it's really easy to get into it from that point too. But I think too is like Reaper has a lot of like Reaper is really powerful. I mean, the thing it's clunky to use. I think like for me, Reaper, I don't like the workflow. Yeah, it doesn't feel intuitive to me. I think, I mean, if you use it enough, you're gonna get used to it. Like use any DAW.
That's any tool,
going to. But I mean, there's still, I don't know. I mean, like I started in Pro Tools. You know, Pro Tools was my first DAW. I own Pro Tools. I've been using Pro Tools since, well, heck, I mean, I think technically 2008. But I mean, I used Pro Tools. I know how it works. I had a workflow in Pro Tools, but I still just find Logic easier. You know, I just find like it has the features I need where I need them. I could get stuff done faster. I find that I like the features in Logic a lot more. But one thing that Reaper has that I wish would get integrated, I don't think any of the other DAWs have it. I think it's just Reaper.
What's that?
Spectral waveforms, like spectral editing and stuff. I mean, obviously, like RX has it.
Yeah, nothing.
RX is not a DAW. Yeah, but you can like in Reaper, you can open up a track, you can set it to the spectral mode. You can look at the spectral track, and then you can go through and edit it.
Now. I think Bitwig also has it. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. I mean, that's something I think should be in every DAW. I think every DAW should have, like in 2022 now, I think we're at a point where that should be a common feature. So just across.
I completely agree. I think people in general need to learn how to read waveforms as much as they need to learn how to read like spectrums, because those are both really important points of information.
Yeah.
With waveforms, it's really easy to see if something's too quiet or noisy or clippy.
Yeah.
Or like has phasing issues versus like spectral stuff. It's like, you know, it's a little bit more surgical, but maybe a little bit more tricky to see if something's clipping.
Yeah, it's maybe trickier to see some clip, and if it's like color based for someone like me who doesn't see color.
Right.
But I mean, at the same time, if you switch back and forth, who cares? Exactly. But I mean, it's like what's really cool about it is that you can, like in Reaper, you can select an area. You can even like free select, like free lasso, you know, an area, and then you can apply an effect to it. So you can like take you can go from like 1 minute 36 to 1 minute 45, and only between like 800 hertz and 1500 hertz. Like select that as a square and compress just that.
That's something like a multiband effect cannot do.
Yeah,
it just cannot do it.
It's mental. Yeah. It's completely nuts.
It's completely mental.
The ability to do stuff like that, like if you're doing sound design, you can go nuts with stuff like that. And I love options. You know, I mean, I guess going back again to like changing the workflow as part of my workflow. I am the sort of person who buys like Blue Cat Patchworks and creates a multi-band patch. Like, okay, I want the low ends to be an LA2A, and I want the middle band to be like a distressor, and I want the top band to be the, you know, like C1 or whatever, you know,
those have their own unique characteristics within those frequencies.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like I can get really surgical with that. I mean, one of my favorite things is like, you know, VCV rack and modular synthesis, because you can go nuts with it. And the first thing I did, of course, is buy the host module, which allows me to load any other plugin and control parameters in those plugins in VCV rack. So I can like open up, you know, Pro Q3 as a filter or whatever. Yeah. Or even like Serum. I can open Serum as a module in VCV rack. I am the sort of person who loves that like insane granular kind of workflow. Like, you know, Kilohertz is one of my favorite brands because they build their stuff on that principle. The ability to like do crazy stuff like LFO tables modulating whatever in phase plan. I love that just nutty, deep, ridiculous stuff.
Yeah. And that's kind of like the thing I like about Max for Live too, which is like unfortunately only for Ableton, because Ableton's based off of Max for Live, which is based off of JavaScript. But you can go into a console and literally change anything that's happening in the DAW with anything that's happening on the screen.
Yeah.
With limited variables. On paper, that sounds really good, but unfortunately, Max for Live is a buggy piece of shit sometimes, and it crashes and has bricked a couple of my projects, which really frustrates me.
Yeah, you got to like save the project and put a copy of it somewhere before you even think about trying. Yeah.
If I'm trying to go for that huge headroom of options, I'm like, I need to save a copy. because I might break this project.
Ableton is really cool too.
Is really cool.
I do need to get Ableton at some point. It's just unfortunately so expensive. But I'm just like, I've seen one of the crazy videos I saw was a guy who did I think it was 10,000 instances of OTT.
What the fuck? 10,000?
10,000. Okay. Like he was like creating stacks and stacks and like plugins and stuff in Ableton. And it's just like, I mean, obviously it did not take very many OTT to just turn into like noise.
Yeah, you need like 10 maybe.
Yeah, I think it took him like 4 hours to render the track when he had the... Yeah, and I mean, it's one of those things. I love that like limitless ability to mess with things. That's what I like about the spectral editing in Reaper. That's what I like about, Blue Cat Patchworks allowing me to open virtually any plugin as like a multi-band effect or something like that. I mean, it doesn't work with Waves, which is actually why I kind of moved out of the Waves ecosystem personally. Well, I mean, another thing with Waves is like, they do that thing where it's like they have the mono and stereo version of the plugin.
Oh, it's so bloaty.
Which is like,
it's
for
so
me,
bloaty.
Yeah, it is like they do the same thing. Like they separate out their Atmos and their surround sound plugins. But it's like, which is not a problem for me because in Logic, I just open like a multi-mono and it's just, the plugin and I can tell it, how it's affecting each speaker set. I don't have to actually buy the surround version of a plugin from them.
You just need a couple extra steps.
But a lot of people, as far as I know, a lot of other people who are not in Logic do have to do that. And it's like, that really sucks. I mean, like, I've not messed around with surround a lot, and I'm starting to get more into Atmos anyway. But I mean, like, I've still got the like cheapo Logitech surround system right now, which I've kind of just experimented with.
I mean, it's good enough to like sculpt your sound, right?
Yeah, I mean, basically like place things, so I can just like make sure things are in the right place.
Yeah.
I mean, Logic now has like integrated Atmos, and it works with a binaural like translation.
And Dolby's actually making it a lot more accessible too, because they have a VST version, and then they have like a Windows plugin that works with headphones.
They're getting it. Well, I mean, one thing is really cool about it being like integrated into Logic too is that like I can export a sound bed file from my DAW. I can create like an actual Atmos sound bed, export it, and that works on any Atmos
rather
system.
than exporting a bunch of stems and then putting it together in something.
Or running it through like real time through their like third party plugin that you have to like link it up to.
Yeah, that sounds annoying.
So it's one of those like it's really cool that it's actually integrated in, and I think Cubase and Pro Tools now have that as well. I could be wrong. I think for Pro Tools you have to get like the really expensive top version to do that. I don't think you can do that in like the standard Pro Tools. But I think like at least with Logic and Cubase, if you own, actually, I'm not sure how the tier system in Cubase works either. I know that they have different levels of it.
I know there's like a Cubase Lite that's like similar to Ableton Lite.
The free version.
Yeah, the free version.
I got that with
I think it has like a
Focusrite.
Yeah, it's like has a max of like 8 channels or something.
Something like that.
Which is good for like if you're like just doing vocals or just tracking. Like, a couple things. Like versus Audacity.
It's also cool for like what am I thinking? I like when you have the light version of a DAW for people. Like if you're working with a client and you're like, if you're like working with a client and you're just like, just send me like remotely, just send me some vocal tracks or something. They can get the free version of the DAW you're working in and then send you just like their tracks. Which is another great thing with Logic. What's really cool is that GarageBand files work with it. And that's not just...
I didn't know that.
Yeah, not just a GarageBand project, but like the one for the phone. And I had a songwriting deal with the Bloody Pineapples guys where our dude Mark was doing vocals for the song we did for a competition. And it was like, we were super rushed. We had to finish the song and put it up that day.
Wow.
It was a 1 day, like from concept to finish. And so he literally grabbed like one of the portable like mics and preamps, and on his drive to work recorded his vocal parts onto his phone into a GarageBand file. And then he just sent me the GarageBand project. And then I opened that in Logic, edited down the vocals, and dropped that into our like full finished song project.
That's awesome.
It's awesome. It's great. It's like GarageBand, just get free GarageBand on the phone. And it's like, if you're an iPhone user, which does account for a high enough portion of the market, most people can do something like that. I mean, obviously with Cubase or Ableton, they're going to work on either system. So that is one advantage for those. And I think the Pro Tools one is pretty straightforward too. So that's doable, I think, at least.
I wish Ableton was easier to collaborate because it's like...
Yeah, I can see that.
I used to use Splice, its collaborative feature with TJ a lot.
Nice.
And I feel like it's just worked less and less and less over the years.
You also have the thing too, like again, another thing you and Toby share in common. You guys have you're a business that's two people, working kind of remotely to each other. Like, I mean, you and TJ get together a lot, but I mean, you guys also you're working in your own space.
Yeah,
you're not
definitely less over the years.
Yeah, you don't have a brick and mortar studio that the two of you both meet at all the time. Like, he's gonna be setting up his studio. You have your studio in a different town. Toby and Ruben, A to Z or A to Z, as he will correct me, is Ruben's in Spain, Toby's in England, and they do the same thing. They're like sharing, whatever they can and putting stuff back in, even though they're both in different DAWs right now. I think Ruben is in Reaper and Toby is switched over from Logic to Pro Tools. So, our condolences. I have to rib him about it all the time. We rib each other about the DAW war all the time because we did the opposite thing to each other. I went from Pro Tools to Logic. He went from Logic to Pro Tools.
Yeah.
Although I do have personal beef with Avid, but
I hate Avid's business model, but if people prefer working on it, I'm not going to give them.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, if the tool works, the tool works. I
am going to tell the person they are getting scammed, but
that's kind of where, we have argued about that. My beef at the end of the day is with Avid as a company, not with Pro Tools as a DAW. I mean, I don't like Pro Tools as a DAW. There's a reason I switched, but I mean, I do take issue with Avid as a company.
Yeah.
And just in general that like pushing really hard on the subscription model and stuff. It's I'm fine with subscriptions, I'm fine with the option. Yeah. But I am a right to own guy. And, it's like with, what am I thinking? With, Plugin Alliance. Like they have the thing where it's like you do the subscription and at the end of every month you get any plugin for $1.
Is that how that works? Okay, because I saw that.
As I understand it, that's how I've not tried it, but as I understand it, that's the new model.
Because I saw their bundle recently because they're having a sale right now, and it's I was like, oh, their bundle looks so good. Oh, but it's subscription based, and that turned me off. But I didn't realize it was like that. So that kind of
they're one of those ones. They're like Kilohertz, where they give you massive discounts that basically pays you back almost the entire thing you've rented. I mean, they used to in the past too. It was $120 a year. Overall for the rentals, but at the end of the year you get $100 coupon. So really you use that, you buy whatever's really doing it for you, and you basically only spent $20 that year on the rental and $100 on a plugin.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty good deal too. I think for me, Kilohertz does that, they do the same thing at the end of every 12-month cycle. You get the, you get to coupon for $100 and again, $120 a year to rent, $100 off, and you have the right to own. So it's basically like a rent to own plan. Yeah. I love the rent to own plans on Arturia has done them. Splice, you brought up Splice earlier. I mean, they got their rent to own system.
Yeah, their system's really good.
I own a lot of stuff through the rent to own system through that. And I love it. I absolutely highly recommend that. And for me, rent to own is a great model. Huge discounts for, rewards for people doing the subscription is a great model. I like when the subscription does not get in the way of right to own. That's my big hang up, and, if you're doing that, I'm totally behind it. But the other thing too is there's the, or what am I thinking? Vital. Yeah. Vital too. Vital has a rent to own sort of thing too. You get the subscription, but every month you pay into it is taken off of the price if you want to buy it. And you can just have Vital for free. But I ended up actually buying it just to support them because Vital's insane.
Really good. Yeah, it's insane.
It's one of the best soft synths out there, and it's free. And it's not conditionally free or free with a free trial as a feature, not a bug like Reaper.
Yeah.
It's free.
Yeah,
you
it's
can
free,
just
no catch free.
Yeah, just get it.
And it's it's one of I'm really happy to see that Vital's in one of those spots that like people are making tutorials on it online that are getting as much traction as Serum was in like 2016, I want to say.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's really cool to see that it's getting more support. You know, shout out to Steve Duda. The Serum's awesome, but Vital's
I mean, I still love Serum.
Yeah.
And I use it all the time. Like and that's the thing too. There is something I can say for the two compared to each other. So, going back to URM, I want to say it was Gabe. Oh man, I'm so sorry for forgetting who it is if it's not Gabe. But they did some fast tracks, like little 10-minute kind of just like bites of information. And they did like 4 of them on the basics of using a synthesizer. And part of it is that, I'm going to say Gabe. If it's not Gabe, I'm sorry. But I'm going to say Gabe going forward just for the sake of the story.
Shout out to Gabe or whoever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, shout out to Gabe either way. Our boy Gabe Carballo. He is, I could have mispronounced the name. I'm sorry if I have. Liminal Effects. He's got that whole thing. He and I are talking about doing some collaboration on some sound design and stuff too. He's a really cool dude. So he did the video where he did, like 4 little things using Serum, and he built these presets, just kind of like showing people how to do stuff in a synthesizer. And I decided, you know, not everyone has Serum, and metal guys especially are not dropping $150 on a synth.
No.
You know, most of them are using like whatever's in their DAW. I mean, you know, that's Toby's thing. Like Toby just uses Logic's like stock synths. And I mean, they're pretty good.
They're great.
Yeah, they're not Serum. So a lot of guys are not going to have access to these presets. So I thought, I'm going to take these presets and I'm going to, as faithfully as I can, reproduce them in Vital so that the guys in the URM community can just download Vital and play with the presets in Vital if they like the sound of them. And I was able to get pretty close, but there is definitely a difference in the engine between Vital and Serum, and you can hear it the most in the low end.
Yeah.
You know, when you're playing with those like rich bass sounds, you can definitely tell the difference between Vital and Serum. And both are great, you know, but it is one of those like, that's the thing. They're such similar, like people all the time are like, oh man, Vital, the Serum killer. You know, it's like,
well, Serum was the massive killer.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. I mean, and I mean, I'll tell you
just
what,
fundamental differences.
I love Massive too. Yeah, but it's one of those, like, there's different workflow differences. There's differences in the engine. But it's also one of those things that's like, each of them is still like, they're 2 very similar, you know, synths overall, but they're still different enough that they're going to be useful for different, like, I love the rich low end of Serum, but, you know, I mean, Vital has 4 oscillators.
Yeah.
You know, Serum kind of has 4, but it's really like a noise oscillator, and the sub oscillator is basically just a wave generator. You know, there's not much to it. You
can't really control it.
Yeah.
There's no custom waveforms.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas, I mean,
that's
Vital,
where Hive comes in handy, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or freaking Faceplant.
Yeah, Faceplant. Yeah, especially Faceplant.
You can go nuts. I mean, you have freaking LFO tables. You know, it's even crazier than that. Yeah, but I mean, it's like each of them has a different sound and a different feel. You're going to get a different experience from them. And that's one of those things. Like, you can do a lot with 3 wavetable oscillators.
Yeah.
That's nuts. And you can do stuff with that you cannot do.
Yeah.
And I think there's some routing stuff in Vital that you can't do in Serum as well.
Yeah. Yeah, Serum does a lot of routing, but I think Hive like does a routing, at least in a way that I really prefer doing it, because it's like, it does drop downs with knobs, and then the modulators feel a lot like a modular synth, but it doesn't feel as like overwhelming like a modular synth.
It's not quite the learning curve.
Yeah. And it's like, it feels like those old like REFX like synths in terms of like layout, but in terms of like complexity and like freedom, it's way more.
Hive is definitely on my list to get. I've missed a couple opportunities way back in the day to get it like really cheap.
Yeah.
I saw it, and I want to say I saw somewhere it was going for like $20 or something.
It was
stupid.
If you got it in the beta, it was like $20, and it's like, I think it's like 200 now. And it's I think it's actually still worth that price point. It's insanely good.
100%. It looks awesome. And like everyone I know who's like owns Hive loves it. So I mean, I know it's definitely worth it. And I mean, I'm such a synth hoarder anyway. I have so many. I mean, I have Pigments, I have Vital, I have every version of Well, I have, at least as far as I know, every version of Massive that's out there.
Massive X.
Yeah, I got tons of like free ones. I've got VCV. I've got Serum. I've got the V collection.
Yep, V collection.
I've got tons and tons and tons of them. I got the freaking Fab Filter one,
I've never used those.
That's a fun one.
Volcano, or what is it? What's it called? No, Volcano's the filter.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can synthesize Volcano kind of, but the one they have is Twin 2.
Yeah, that's the one.
It's just like, it's a really basic one. It's kind of like, I got it like part of the package. I just bought like most of I think there's only 2 of them I don't own. And I think it was like their really simple filter or whatever, because it's like, I don't have a reason to spend money on this, but I kind of got it because I was just saving money on the whole package, and I might as well have another synth. I love the workflow and the UI in Fab Filter.
It's so good. It's perfect. It's actually perfect.
I don't know how
they nailed it.
Exactly.
I don't have any complaints with it.
Pro Q3 is still like the EQ.
Yeah, I mean Pro Q2 I had some complaints with. I was like, hey, I could sometimes use Ableton's EQ over this.
Yeah,
Ableton's EQ has like,
that's fair,
like less lag over it. And then they optimized Pro Q3. They added side chaining into Pro Q3.
Side chaining is really cool. The dynamic
EQ has like basically no phasing anymore.
I use the mid side, like basically the band placement, the stereo placement of the bands all the time.
Yeah.
Like all the time. Like I'll do the mid side in mastering. I'll do it on
instruments. I'll do it on buses. I'll do it on the master.
If I need more width, if I need to play around with like the drum overheads and get like a different image out of them, I'll use it for that. I'll do, if I'm hearing like in the drum overheads, if I'm hearing like a hiss that I really don't like on one side, I can just pull out a band, narrow out that hiss, and set that band to that one side.
Yeah.
It's crazy how powerful that is. And I mean, it's not the only EQ that does it. I don't think it's even the first. I think there was a TDR one that did it before that. But I mean, it's just the usability of Pro Q is amazing.
Well, it's also just like, I don't think I've used an EQ with as many like keyboard shortcuts as anything else. So I can like scroll or control scroll or just like hit, Control Z in the plugin and it'll work, versus a lot of other EQs that won't work that way. And so it's like how it's integrated into the DAW works really well. And I'm sure with the new clap format, it'll work even better if they decide to make it in clap format.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like they're pretty well ahead of things. I feel like if somebody they'll probably adapt. Like if it's working well, I think they'll adopt it. I don't think Fab Filter, at least, I think will be pretty quick.
They're very with it. Audio thing is very, very with it. I have a lot of respect for audio thing.
Yeah. I feel like Slate is usually kind of behind. Like they're good. I love Slate.
I think they just take their time.
Yeah, no, 100. I think it's a smaller team too. I think Slate has like less people working on
skeleton crew kind of.
Native Instruments definitely takes their time, and they definitely have the crew. But
they're just corporate as fuck.
Yeah, they got their own thing going on. Of course, they're part of that huge merger too. Yeah. Which I mean, that one I'm still really interested to see. It's I keep wanting to call it SoundScan, but that's a different thing.
I forget.
Oh man, yeah, it sounds something.
Yeah.
I feel terrible for forgetting, but I don't know. Maybe I don't. Either way, yeah, it's an interesting merger, and one of the things about it that fascinated me is they brought in like one umbrella that covers such a different variety of companies and ways of doing business. And Toby and I talking about this earlier this week, I was saying like you have Isotope, who's been talking about going full subscription, no right to own. And you have Native Instruments, who doesn't have a subscription as far as I'm aware, has been like basically all purchase, and they're about the bundles. They're about like saving you money. You buy complete and you get like, $18,000 worth of plugins for like $1,500 or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like 90% off if you buy complete, which is a great deal.
Yeah.
Complete is worth every penny. I have like the top tier version of complete.
Yeah, I have complete ultimate.
Love it.
11, and I still use most things.
I have 12 collectors anniversary like special. Like it's such a long one. I think the full one. I think the actual full name is like Complete 12 Ultimate Collector's Anniversary or something like that. A lot of
suffixes.
Like but I mean, it's worth it. Yeah. Every penny is worth. I mean, I use so much stuff in there, and you have such a variety of cool stuff. And then you have, and then Plugin Alliance is in that, and they're one of those companies that has that like almost more of a rent to own kind of model. And it's really interesting to see such a widespread of like business practices now under one umbrella. And I was telling Toby, it's like, I'm interested to see how that's going to, I'm nervous too to see, but I'm interested to see how that's going to like bleed over, if it bleeds over at all. Are they just going to all completely be autonomous, which is so far what it's looking like?
Yeah, I hope it's autonomous so they don't go under like a single subscription model like Adobe. Like, please just don't turn into Adobe.
Yeah,
please,
I don't want Native Instruments.
God, please.
I don't want Native Instruments to be like all subscription based. That would suck. Then, on the other end, there's some collaboration I would like. So, for example, I mean, I've got Native Instruments. My 1176, the Native Instruments version, is made by Softtube. Mm-hmm. It's a different company. And that's got me thinking, like, man, it'd be really cool to get, like, Native Complete. And Native Complete comes with, like, a Plugin Alliance designed, like, distressor or something. Because Plugin Alliance does some fantastic, like, analog modeled plugins and stuff. Like, Townhouse is still my go-to bus compressor. The Shadow Hills, I
can't believe they give that away for free. I can't believe they give that away for free.
Nuts.
It is actually nuts.
Yeah, I mean, for the listeners listening at home, when you are listening to this, there is a Shadow Hills in the plugin chain for the voiceover stuff that I do for YouTube and the podcast. So yeah, if you're listening to this, there is a Shadow Hills, the BX,
mastering compressor, or the Opti.
There is a not a live one, the plugin Alliance one.
Yeah.
God, I wish I had a real one, but
the thing's a monster.
It's also like $8,000,
$10,000.
Is it up?
It's 10.
Oh God, no!
Yeah, it's going up.
It's $2,000 more I have to find.
Yeah.
Oh, I love Shadow Hills. I mean, they're good. Such cool stuff.
I want a mono gamma.
Yeah,
I want a fucking mono gamma.
I want like a whole rack of them. I want to build like my own desk out of 500 series like preamps, and they're all mono gamma. Yeah. No, I that would be so cool. If you're into that like steampunk aesthetic, they're probably the one to get. I would love to see like a steampunk like 500 series console that's like all Victorian, but it's like black, all
or late like 1930s aesthetic.
Yeah, exactly,
like
and it's all just
Victorian.
And it's all just built out of the the different Shadow Hills like module. I mean, it would cost probably as much as like a new Neve, but minimum, because even the Neve freaking preamps the same type are cheaper. I think that like some of the most expensive freaking 500 series preamps are the mono gamma.
Because those are like, I believe, 800 to 900 in the used market, and then brand new they're like
1,200 plus new for new at least. I mean, you can buy buy an API freaking 500 series for what, 800, 600, like MSRP or something?
I think they're 6, and they usually go like 4 or 5. Like they're pretty affordable.
Like they're not terrible. They're really not terrible. And honestly, I mean, they get costly with enough of them, but
even the DBX stuff that's like $300, $400, they're fine.
DBX is legit.
Yeah, they're fine.
Local too.
Yeah, they're local. They're from Utah.
Local to us for the listeners. They them and Mag Audio are
they're in Orem, right? Mag.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah,
a lot of startups in Orem. A lot of startups.
Apparently it's good for startups.
There's a lot of AI stuff in Orem and Northern Salt Lake as well.
I've learned that Salt Lake apparently has a lot of unicorn companies too.
Unicorn companies? I don't know the term.
I'm trying to remember if unicorn off the top of my head. I want to say it's like over $1 billion companies and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Like gotcha. Really major corporations and stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of like really cool gear out there and stuff. What was I thinking? Oh yeah, the one of the fast tracks from URM. I had a buddy who was watching that, one of the mastering ones, and Mike Kalajian, who did that one, he had a Kive Audio EQ, like a mastering EQ, and I want to say no, sorry, it wasn't a Kive. What was that? Why is I thinking Kive? It was a NIF, the NIF Soma.
Never heard of, I actually am not familiar with NIF stuff.
It's not one you're going to come across as quickly.
How is it spelled?
I think it's like knife without the E. So yeah, it was like a NIF Soma, and he was really into that one. And it's another one of those. It's a mastering EQ. It's like $8,000 or some ridiculous high price. And he fell in love with it from the Fast Track. And so he's looking it up. And very recently, Plugin Alliance dropped a NIF Soma freaking plugin. And he got that. And it's now his like go-to EQ.
I'm looking at the Soma right now.
Yeah, it is a really, really nice unit. It's definitely one of those bespoke units. Like, it is one of those ones that you're gonna spend a pretty penny on it, and you're gonna thank the company for letting you touch it.
Oh my goodness, this thing looks awesome, and
right?
They also specifically make it so that it's easy to open up and repair in case anything breaks.
Yeah, so it's really cool.
They're really leaning into the right to repair stuff,
and it's really basic like components and stuff too. Like, it's really beautiful, but you can tell it's a really standard kind of like rocker switch and stuff.
Yeah.
Which it's a really, really, really nice unit. I would definitely love to get my hands on one for the mastering setup. I mean, again, though, it's just like the Shadow Hills. Like that and the Shadow Hills alone are going to be a freaking fortune. Pair that with the freaking focals I want to get for the monitoring system.
Yeah, and you're paying like $2,000 a pop or $4,000 a pop for those.
Yeah. I think the ones I was looking at are $4,000. I'm looking at the Trio 11BE.
Oh yeah.
The really expensive ones.
I still need to like find a studio and like listen to those before like if I get to a point where I'm like, man, I want to buy an upgrade to that.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, there's so to the listeners at home, there might be some audio texture in the background for a minute. My brother was just coming downstairs. I don't know if you're going to hear that during our conversation. There's going to be an awkward break there. That's why he came down here to deal with something. So
no worries.
We had an interruption. If you guys are wondering why the edit there got really weird, or if there's some background noise, that's what's going on.
Where were we? We were talking about, let's see. Oh yeah, Focals, the Trio.
Yeah,
the
Trio 11BE is the one I'm looking at. I see them all over the place, and a lot of people trust them. And of course, I have heard Focal, like other Focals and stuff, and I've liked the sound of the Focal speakers. There's something you get something that's really musical, you get something that's really surgical, and I feel like Focal is kind of the balance that I really like the most of those two elements. Some people are going to get ones that are like really hard musical, some are going to get like just completely sterile sound. People are going to have their preference, and I feel like generally Focal is like where I like my monitors, where I like my listening.
They're like Audie's headphones. Like Audie's headphones are just like, they have really high excitement and like the high end, and that's like is really good for listening, but it's also really good for just like musical stuff.
Yeah,
you can just kind of like pick out like the
Gen X are famous for being really musical.
Yeah,
like everyone says, like the Gen X are the ones you put in the studio for the clients. They listen to it and it's all like buttery and smooth, and they just fall in love.
Yeah,
and then I want to see is it ATC?
I haven't heard ATC stuff.
I'm trying to. Well, it's a specific like. I want to say it is true of ATC as well, but there's an Amphion, I think, are the ones I was trying to think of. Apparently have they're super sterile, like just dead sterile. Like they're almost like you're trying to listen to it in a laboratory sterile, which can be great. And
I have Atom speakers. I have the A7Xs, and they're front ported, and they have fantastic transient response. They're really good, like mid to high frequency. They're low frequency, even for like a 7.5 inch speaker, is actually like lower than I was expecting.
Yeah,
and I don't have it shelved because I have a subwoofer, being able to turn that on and off.
Yeah,
but they're I feel like they're a nice balance between surgical and musical. Like I enjoy listening to music on it, but
I'm pretty well with that on the Kali ones I have now. I've just the really cheap like LP6, real simple speakers, but also front ported. Like you're saying, they're front ported and enclosed. They've got a really good, and like you said, kind of a pretty good low end for what they are. I mean, like you, I also pair mine with a sub. I just find like for two reasons. One, I find like the deep low end of the sub helps me to get the sound I'm trying to get better.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing too is I'm somebody who's found that like I get the best results when I have separation in my mix. So when I'm listening to the speakers, I've got I want my low end responding on its own speaker and not changing the response of, the like larger cones in the smaller speakers. And I think that's another thing about the Trio 11s that I really like is you don't need a sub for them because they're massive, but you can pair them with the sub. And if you do, you basically have like 4 points of separation, which is one of those things. Like for me, the more separation, the better. Before I started looking at focals, I was actually looking at the A7X, but I was looking at the 77X because they have more of that separation.
Yeah, and they're I believe those are the far field versions.
Yeah. I have a buddy in the UK who's running the 77Xs, and he swears by them. He loves them. Of course, it also may help that he has them like running through the SSL Fusion and all that.
Yeah.
So, like he got a really nice, like it's a small setup, but it's a really nice setup.
Yeah.
And it definitely, he was selling me on the 77Xs for a while. And I mean, one thing that's really cool about the Atoms is those tweeters. You know, the ribbon tweeters are definitely going to give you a very interesting sound versus
like zero distortion on the high end. Especially when I have like super excited high end around like the AK range, because it's like I went from the JBL what are they called, the LSRs, the LSR
so did I. That was mine before the Callies.
And those are fine, but like god damn, that high end just gets so like scorched when they're when it's getting up there.
The Callies too. I found the Callies, like these were the same price. A pair of these was the same price as the LSRs.
Oh, for real.
But I find these way better.
Yeah,
those really like these a lot more than the LSRs. I left those with Josh when I moved out, and so he's got he had the sub too. Because I had the LSRs, but I had the LSRs with the sub. If you can hear the dog bark, this wouldn't be the first time the dog has barked in the podcast. The one I did with Adam.
Yeah.
I think his dog too. I think my dog interrupted at one point. I think his dog as well.
It's just background texture.
Yeah. Like I said, sound texture.
Yeah, exactly.
if you're a Rooster Teeth fan, the Anima podcast, sound texture. That's what we're dealing with.
Yep.
But yeah, the Callies, just like for the same price point, you just get, for my ear at least, a much better speaker. And I think that I think for me, it's a great, man, I lost my train of thought. It is the Callies are a great example though of like, I mean, so here's the thing, like I do this for a living, but I'm in a small room. I'm working, like Callies are like the cheapest usable monitors you can possibly buy.
Yeah.
But I get results I'm happy with. The Callies, they're a great example of that price thing. Like I get results I'm happy with, and I get good results. And obviously I want to upgrade my setup at some point. I want to go Atmos. And what I'm probably going to end up doing is I'm going to do Atmos physically when I have the space and the money for it. And I'm probably going to do Atmos using the LP, or actually I think I'm going to use the INs because they have a little more separation. But I'm probably going to do the Atmos with the INs and then have a main stereo set of the focals when I can afford it. And I just find I don't know. I find the Callies to be a really good bang for your buck. I ended up getting, got one of my friends into the IN8s, She was like, I want some cool, I want some cool monitors. I don't have like a huge budget, but I want upgrades. I've been in headphones all the time. I'm just like, Callies good.
They're good.
You're going to get some good results. Throw on some IN8s and you got the low end and stuff. So my thing is I have the pair of Callies and then I have a Rockville 10-inch sub. And I don't even remember what the model is off the top of my head. I sent it to you recently as I think TJ was looking at it, right? Or was that someone else I sent it to?
I don't remember. I don't recall. Sorry.
I feel like it. Yeah, I sent it to someone recently. I want to say it was you. TJ was talking about building the studio and was like curious about sub in a small space, since I'm in a like 11 by 12 room with a sub. We
were talking about that, and that was with my buddy RJ, who was he was upgrading. He was wanting to upgrade from, he's on HD 650s right now, and he wants to go into with speakers and treating the room, and it's like kind of an unusually shaped room. It's still rectangular, but it is small.
Yeah.
And it's like when I lived in Lehigh, I lived in a 10 foot by 10 foot room, and I originally had my setup in there, and I could not use my subwoofer in there. It would overpower everything, even on its like lowest notch on the sound.
Yeah, this one has a good dynamic range, which is one of the things I like about it, but it's also like really clean. It was, I want to say it was recommended to me by John Maciel, one of the URM admins back in the day. I think he was the one who like got me hip to the fact that this is a good sub, B, a cheap sub, and C, pairs specifically pretty well with the LP6. So, I mean, I got it by that recommendation. I'm really happy with the result. It's really clean.
Yeah, it's super good. It's not like, not going to shake your socks off, but it's like
it can.
I'm sure it can, but yeah, any subwoofer can. Yeah. But it's like, but the fact that it can go so low,
it's very polite.
Yeah, the fact that it can go so low without like
distorting or
putting a big scoop in the mix is like really nice.
Yeah, and it's one of those like when you're working with a sub in a small room, if you're going to be doing that, you kind of want to. It is about the volume. You want to have it down low enough that, whatever standing wave there is a risk of is not going to be loud enough to overpower. But of course, some rooms and some subs, you just can't combine them to get to that level, you know? So sometimes it's not going to be an issue, or sometimes it is going to be an issue. But honestly, I mean, again, I'm like this room is like I think it's 10 by 11, I think, or something. I think it's longer. On the other, I think it's actually like more, 10 by 13.
It looks like 13.
Yeah,
because it's like it was in a 10 by 10 room.
It's my bedroom, which is the next room over, is a similar floor plan, but it's shorter on one end, and that's a 10 by 11. So yeah, I think it is 10 by 13.
What I like about the setup too is that you can easily do like hall microphones if you're recording stuff. So it's like you put a microphone in your bathroom.
Yeah,
it's like
I mean, it's super dead because both of the rooms are just like filled to the absolute brim with junk, but
so you have the library, which is nice and diffused, which I don't know if you can hear well on the dynamic mic, but it's like the echo is so short and there's like no flutter. It's
really clean, and that's kind of the thing. It's one of the other reasons I can get away with this space. It is really small and it's a really weird setup, and it is also an untreated room, and even worse still, like 6 inches above my right monitor I have this whole like HVAC freaking vent. There's definitely issues with the room, and the results I get are mostly the result of like my own experience, my ears, and even just my being used to the room. I listen to other mixes I love all the time on these, so I know what stuff should sound like. I have reference tracks, so I can reference against it and know what stuff, what like a good commercial mix is going to sound like compared to. So I get pretty good results based on that. But it is definitely not ideal. But one of the reasons I can get away with it is because of these bookshelves. They wrap around kind of a C shape around my listening position. I mean, if you've watched some of the videos we have on the channel, like if you watch the blind producer video, you'll see me standing in that space. So it's, it's like that on, 3 walls, basically.
Yeah.
And because of that, it diffuses the sound enough that it is actually a very clean and dead room, even for the problems with it.
Yeah, it's not like mathematically diffused or anything.
No, exactly. It's definitely, it's chaotic.
But I think it's good enough for vocals, like especially for vocals.
Yeah, you can do, for sure.
It still sounds alive in here. Like it's not dead, but it's not like, I'm not hearing like tinniness. Like off the walls.
There's no weird, like if you get really, really loud, there's a little bit of flutter like in the corners between the ceiling and the vent hangs down lower. So there's corners up there, and you'll get a little bit of build up and flutter up in there sometimes, but that's really the only place it's an issue. You don't really have it in the corners of the room, not on the side, not on the roof, because the shelves basically go to the top, and you get a pretty good space. And I mean, like for voiceover stuff, it's really good, and you could get away with singing in it. You could definitely sing in my room. And that is one of the things, like you can definitely record stuff like that. I've gotten pretty good results on guitar cabs and stuff too. I'm actually able to get that without any like weird, standing waves and stuff. So I do have that advantage, but I mean, not everyone's going to have the same setup. And like your space is pretty small too, but you've got a lot of treatment.
So yeah, I have a lot of treatment, especially recently. So I used to use just like foam treatment, which was, it's fine
like the
for
Arlax panels or whatever.
No, I just used some like the dog shit Amazon foam. Oh, and it was fine for like treating sibilants, but as soon as you got any like medium like frequency or even low frequency, there were so many standing waves. And that time you came over with like Sonar Works and that reference, there's like so much buildup in the low end. And that low end sounds a lot more tighter in there. There's like zero flutter echo anywhere I'm clapping in the room at this point now, too, which is really nice, especially when I'm like setting up like room mics and I don't want to flutter and I'm clapping with sharp transients. Or low end with sharp transients, like kick.
No kidding.
It's been. I'm actually still getting used to it. It's going to take me a while to learn how to mix around it. So
like you got to. And the thing too is like even if the room is treated really well and you're getting the response you want and it's a really flat space, you still got to get used to it. Like I mean, how many of us spend our day-to-day lives in a like acoustically tuned room?
Not many of us.
Yeah. You know, I mean, like, unless you're doing it for a living. And at that point, you're used to it because you have that room.
Yeah.
At which point, you're used to that room. But, you know, I mean, you got to be listening.
It's funny you said that. So my parents came over recently and they walked into my room. They're like, whoa, it sounds different in here. And I'm like, does it?
No, but it's like, we don't notice that. Well, a great example of that when I was in middle school, you know, I was still living in the same room down here.
Yeah.
Cause I'm living with family right now. I'm one of them poor people who live in the mom basement. Well,
no shame in that. No shame in that.
I have a great family. Just quick moment. I'm going to shout out my mom on the podcast. She has been super supportive and awesome. And I've not been here my whole life. I moved back in like end of 2019 to like focus on audio full time. It was a lot easier.
Shout outs to mom.
Yeah. Shout out to my mom. She's been awesome because not everyone has a supportive family and you're going to have different challenges. Everyone's going to have other stuff. And I am endlessly thankful for the fact that my mom not only is, in my life and not toxic about being in my life, but also supportive of what I do for a living and everything. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, not everyone has that blessing. So definitely a huge shout out to my mom right now. But yeah, so I was in that same room. That was my bedroom in middle school too. And I had the bathroom pretty filled up with I had towels and bathrobes and a dresser in there and stuff. Mm-hmm. And it was a really dead room because of all that, like a lot of soft furnishing. Like there were towels on multiple walls and, you know, the hooks with the bathrobe and stuff. I cleared that stuff out as part of a cleanup or something like that. And I had one towel on the wall and everything was cleared. And I think even the dresser had come out and moved to a different place in the room. And I noticed immediately, I had not noticed it before, but I noticed immediately how much more lively the room was. And that was one of the early times where I became aware of how furniture and what you have on the walls makes a huge, huge difference in the sound of a room, even a small room. And I think about that when I started actually getting into my forays into sound treatment and stuff like that. Is when I was living in Alaska, when I had my place up there, I was kind of doing the studio in the living room, and I did packing blankets. I did the Arlex foam, the cheap stuff.
Yeah.
A mix of that and the Amazon stuff. I did whatever soft furnishings I could do. At one time I actually did buy, I didn't even end up getting to build or use them because I bought them for a situation that ended up not happening. But I did buy a few boxes of it was the Knopf Earth Wool, which is basically their more eco-friendly version of Corning 703 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I bought that so I could build proper, acoustic treatment and stuff. And I ended up using it, but I ended up selling it to a local friend who was doing audiobooks, and she used it for her audio space.
Dad in the room.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I did get to use it. I just didn't get to use it in my own studio.
Yeah, sometimes it's
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those I've had experienced a lot of different stuff, and when I moved away, I turned my bedroom into a studio for Josh, so he could write and stuff. And he's not an engineer or producer; he's a songwriter. But he still likes to make his own demos, and he's really picky about his sound. So it made sense to give him the space he could work in. I left him my monitors and stuff like that. And for that one, I did a whole mix of there's packing blankets, there's curtains, there's cheap foam, whatever. It's just whatever I could get to try to make the room work. And it is the most unideal room. It was,
acoustics are so tricky because it's
oh yeah.
when I used to not really care much about acoustics because I cared more just about songwriting, but now that I'm doing more
you
mixing,
weren't an engineer or producer, you're a songwriter.
Yeah, exactly. just songwriter. But now I'm doing both. I'm like mixing, I'm writing, I'm also doing a little bit of live stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like one of those things, I'm like, something's wrong with the room. Something's not right. Something's not adding up. And it's like, as I'm doing more and more research, it's just like one of those things that's like, there is no one answer to one.
No, 100%. I mean, there's a reason everyone's rooms are different too.
Yeah.
Like tons of guys have their own kind of sound going on. And I mean, you can go to some of the biggest studios in the world and they're going to have a completely different, like, it's going to be tuned differently. It's going to be laid out differently. And it's like, you'll get one guy and it is like detail tuned. It is like every single thing in the room down to the furniture.
Down to like 25 designed. Hertz. Yeah. Like down to each 25 incremental hertz. Yeah.
You know, like the couch is bespoke because it's designed to be an absorber or a diffuser or whatever. Yeah. Like it'll be that far. But then you'll go into another like absolute legend studio and it's just like, the room has a little bit of a shape to kind of tune it up a bit.
Yeah.
It's definitely treated, but it's just like full of junk.
It's just full of
like
shit.
On this one side, there's a huge wall of like rack gear, but the other side has its own thing going. So you got this like, asymmetry going on with like this hard wall of stuff. And then you have just like a diffuser on the other side or something, so it's got like this, everyone has a different room and some people do. It's going back. Like some people like the musical sound and they know what they're listening for and they can make it work with really musical sounding monitors. And some people like the really, really surgical sound. And I mean, it's like, you look at like Warren Hewitt, for example, from Produce Like a Pro, his room is like, I mean, one, it is like a shed, or even Christian Henson from Spitfire. Like both of them have that same, like they have this like shed and it's just full of stuff. And it's like, it is a treated room. It is a room that is designed to be acoustically like clean and usable, but it is like you get in there, it is just a clutter of all their gear laid out. Like Warren just has this like towering stack of equipment. I think it's like mostly compressors or whatever, but it's like, you can go into those rooms, but then you'll go into somebody else's room and it's going to be clean and detailed. I sent you Pontius Helm from Dead by April. I sent you a photo of his studio recently.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was the one that's like just pure white. It's got like the design. Yeah.
it's a single console and that's it.
Yeah. It's like a desk console and there's like a couch
for
someone to like client to sit at or whatever. And it's like just super tuned, super cleaned, nothing to it. It's crazy,
Which for some people is like a really good environment because there's like very few distractions.
I mean, that's the thing. That's like, there's the minimalism versus the maximalism too. It's like, are you somebody who's like distracted by all the stuff? Or are you somebody who's like, it keeps your, like creative, like it keeps your creative juices flowing, I mean, it's like everyone is going to be different. And it's the same thing. Everyone's going to hear things different. Everyone's going to be listening differently. Yeah. So it's like, again, just like the cheap versus expensive gear, it's not about, going all in with something, you're not going to like buy a bunch of panels and build a perfect room,
especially when
you get the perfect monitors and that's going to do it for you. You might be somebody who needs more musical monitors. You do still want to like, treat your room and stuff. But I mean, like overall, maybe you're somebody who is going to do better in a less than perfect room that has a bunch of like gear on the walls and floating around. Or maybe you're going to be somebody who needs like a perfect surgical mathematical room.
Yeah. And it's like, there's some rooms that are like completely diffused, right? They don't even have a rug on the ground. They just diffuse the ceiling, diffuse the wall. The floor is just hardwood. Yeah. Or some people have a completely dead room. Some people have a mix of both. And
100%.
I'm personally like a guy who likes a little bit of both. I like a little bit of a lively sound.
I like the sound of this room right now.
I really like the sound of this
room. It's like it's dead, but it's not dead. It's clean, but there's still there's a roominess to it. There's a liveliness to it. It doesn't feel like you're like have like pressure on your soul.
It would take me so long to learn how to like mix in this room. It would take me eons because it's like I'm so used to my setup.
Yeah, and it would probably take me a long time to get used to your setup.
Right? It's like
100%.
Completely different environment.
Yeah. Well, it's been good having you. I think it's probably a good time to wrap it up. We're gonna head out and everybody who's been listening, thank you for sticking around, just listening to us nerd out. We're definitely, like I said, we're going to have Vasily back on. I want to talk to him and TJ about the stuff that they do together. We're like, we haven't even gotten into, Peak Divide or any of that stuff. Like,
properly introduced myself yet, but I will. Don't worry.
So after 2 hours, So thank you everybody for listening, and hope you've had a great time hanging out with us. And like I said, we're definitely gonna be back with more, because I mean we could probably do a freaking 16 hours.
Yeah, we could. And thanks for having me on. I could, thanks for listening to me ramble. And it's been a while since I've been on a podcast, Stream of Consciousness. So I'm looking forward to doing some more.
It's good when you can just chat about good gear, though.
Yeah, it's always fun.
It makes it so much.
It's always building up in my head. So good to get it out.
Yeah.
Anyways,
all right, everybody. Thank you for listening.
See ya.